If you'd like to run a report on the transactions that you have for your sites, then you would come into our reports menu right here at the top and you would select reports. Now we just need to select what type of report do you would want to generate for your reporting purposes. We have several different types of reports to select from. Some range from running a report by the driver or running a report by your vehicles. This would also include drivers or vehicles that are listed as single cards in the system. So just keep that in mind. If you're using a single card system, you'll want to use the respected driver or vehicle card that you have those labeled as in the application. For more about that, see the proprietary card file setup. The other options that we have is we can filter report based on account. So we have activity detail by account for driver or for vehicle. So this is going to allow you to filter them based on the account that those particular drivers or vehicles are in. We do have some pump and product total reports in the application. So if you're just looking for pump total information for a particular site, you could generate the report on those. If you have the need to generate a report based on network transactions, so that would be any sort of Visa, MasterCard, fleet cards that you're authorizing through a host, you can generate a network transaction card report based on the type or the site that you are looking to generate that report based on. The odometer exceptions report simply shows you any transactions that are flagged in the system as a bad odometer. Bad odometer tracking and flagging is basically it's going to look at the driver's entry for their particular vehicle transaction. It's going to look at their odometer prompt that they entered, and it's going to compare it to a few things. It's going to compare it to the last known odometer value for that particular vehicle, and it's going to look at the restrictions that may be on that odometer tracking for that particular vehicle. So, if, for example, they enter a number that's outside the range of their restriction, then it may flag that as a bad odometer, in which case it would show up on this report. If somebody enters an odometer value that was less than the last odometer value, say somebody fuels and this time they put an odometer that was 1,000 miles less than the previous, well, obviously on a car you don't have the way for those odometer miles to go backwards. So the system doesn't expect a lower than the last odometer entry. If somebody does put in a lower value, then it means that one of those odometer entries was most likely incorrect. So it's also going to show up in this odometer exceptions list. Some other reasons that you may see an exception is if somebody enters a single entry, like an odometer value of 1, or a sequential entry, like somebody enters 1, 2, 3, 4 as their odometer value, that may also prompt them for an odometer exception in this report. So if you would like a list of those transactions, you could simply run this report, and it'll give you a list of those transactions. If you need to go and then update the odometer to fix that transaction, you can. Incomplete transactions are transactions that are done on the fuel site controller from cards that are missing from the application. So, for example, if you had a card, let's just say 1234 in the fuel site controller, and it's considered valid and somebody was able to fuel, and the fuel site controller accepted that transaction and everything is stored on the controller, when the data gets added to the application during our syncing process, if the application doesn't have a card 1234, it doesn't know how to associate that card to a particular card number and an account, at which point it would be something that shows up in this incomplete transaction report. Now, new sites and sites that have all the cards added to the DX Fleet application should not have any problems with incomplete transactions. Older sites, if somebody's manually adding cards to the fuel site controller, or we migrated a database that was incomplete because it didn't have all the cards that were on your previous fuel site controller, then you may run into this kind of problem. Once you generate this report, you simply need to come into the application and create the missing card, and then future transactions will show up correctly for that particular driver or vehicle once they're added correctly to the system. One thing you'll note here is the different types of reports we have. We have an activity detail report and we have an activity summary report for some of these different reports. A detail report is going to be one that shows you all of the details for each transaction, and a summary report is simply going to give you the totals on those transactions. It's not going to break down each individual transaction on the report. One thing to note here also is that we are expanding the list of reports. So this list might change from time to time, and you may see new reports or updated reports show up in this reports list. We're trying to ensure that the reports that everybody needs are added to the application, and also that the reports are easy to use and work in the way that you would expect them to. Um, a couple other reports that we have here are the account card listing. So if you need to get a list of all the cards that are currently in the application, you can simply use the account card listing report and it'll give you that list as well. When you select a report, say we're going to run, let's do activity detail by driver card 1. We're going to go over here to the right. We're going to select the date range of what dates do we want to show up on the report. So for this example, we've got some transactions that were done a couple months ago. We're going to select, April 1st, and we'll just say to today. Now here we have a time selection. So if you want them to be from morning to evening, you could do 12 o'clock a.m. And we could say, let's just go to 11:59 p.m., for example. And then here we're going to have an option for selecting our card number. And we're going to have a starting and ending card number selection. If you would like to run the report on one particular card, you could just select that. Let's just say we're going to select the driver 1 card here in this example. And you can select driver 1 as the starting and the ending card. This would generate the report only on this card. The other options you have are selecting a range of cards. So we could say every card between this card and this card would run, and then we would have all of these cards show up in that particular report. If we want to do all the cards, you could simply select all here, and that will generate the report for all of them. Once we have the parameters set that we would like, we're going to hit Request Report. You're going to hit Request Report, and it's going to tell you that a report is being generated, and you can navigate to the Downloads page to generate the report. So we're going to go ahead and hit Close here, and then we're going to go back to the Reports page, and now we're going to select Downloads. Once we select Downloads, you'll see here is the report that we just generated, the Activity Detail by Driver report, and we have a little download button on the right here. If you don't see the download button here, it could mean a couple things. The first thing is that the report is simply still being generated, and you may need to hit this refresh button until the report shows you the download icon. If it's a large report, it may take a few moments for that report to be generated. Just hit the refresh and eventually it should show up here. The other option is it may say no report data. No report data simply means the selection that you picked for the date range and the cards and the time did not find any transactions for that selection that you've made, and it can simply not generate a report with 0 transactions. So if you see no report data, it either means that you're most likely selecting an incorrect date range or card selection, or simply there's no transactions for those particular individuals at that time frame that you selected. It's also possible that you may just be selecting the wrong report, and you may need to just revisit the report selection and select a different type of report. For example, if you are running a report on vehicles, but you don't have any vehicle cards in the system, then you may just need to jump over to the driver report instead of the vehicle report. So once you have that, you'll hit the download button here, and it's just going to save to your browser. So I have it down here on the bottom. I'm just going to select it, and we're going to open it up. And here is a sample of this activity detail report. So we're going to have our company name at the top. We're going to have the date ranges that we ran that transaction for. And then down here, we're going to have the list of all the transactions. Remember, this is a detail report, so you will see all of the transactions in a detail report, and you won't just see the totals. So this report, depending on how big you run it, may be fairly large. So just something to keep in mind what type of report you would like to run. And now we have different cards and different accounts and your totals and the amounts. And you can print this, you can email this, or whatever you need to do so. We're going to close that out. And we're going to go back to reports. Now, if you wanted to generate the report again for one that you previously generated, it will save in that downloads page. So you can go back and just select it again and re-download the same report. So that's kind of a handy thing. If you needed to just look at last month's report one more time, you could do it that way. The other options that we have for reports are you can run any of these reports that you want here, but you can also set up a scheduled task to run the report. We'll go over the scheduled task in another section, but just note that you can schedule a report to either run sometime in the future on an automatic schedule or to run in the future on a reoccurring schedule basis. So those reports will be generated all the time at whatever intervals you select. So just understand that we do have a scheduler that you can configure for more ease of use for your reporting, so you don't have to come in here and select the same report each time. And that's how we are going to generate reports in the application.